All right, intro it up, bro. Giving you some good intro sound bites. Everybody do the dinosaur.
What?
What? You never seen the dinosaur?
No, I know exactly what that is, but I'm just like, you're doing
Oh, man. Do the intro thing.
Oh, man. Hello and welcome to the How to Film Weddings podcast. My name is Nick Miller and I'm joined by my good friend John Bunn. Johnny Bunn, how you doing?
Man, I'm doing really good. This interview today was insanely good.
Yeah, it was really good. We talked to Miss McKenzie Miller of McKenzie Miller Film. She's based in New York City. We talked about her journey as a filmmaker, how she's been in business for 10 years, has this beautiful cinematic, emotional style. And then she gave a shout out to all our female lady filmmaker friends and some encouragement there. So you're going to want to stick around and check that out if you're a female. Even if you're not a female, it's still good advice. But we recorded this episode and I'm going to say, let's jump in and listen to it. Well, hello, McKenzie. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Hi, thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be part of this.
Yeah. So before we get into anything, I don't know if you know this, but my last name is also Miller, or your maiden name was Miller. Are we related?
There's a chance. Miller is not that common of a last name.
Yeah, it's super weird that someone else would have that last name. Anyway,
yeah.
So for while we get into this, before we get into what we want to talk about today, why don't you give people a kind of a quick rundown of who you are? Tell us a little bit about your business, how long you've been shooting, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so I've been in business right at 10 years. Started at the end of 2008. I was living in Austin, Texas. So started and sort of built my business there. And then in 2010, I moved to New York City. So I've been here almost 9 years. And my business truly grew in New York, just really beyond kind of what I had imagined when I moved here. I have, I think, a pretty classic and emotional style in my video. That's more what I'm drawn to. I'm a really emotional person by nature, and so that definitely goes over into my work. I tend to kind of create and produce what I am interested in, and so that's kind of reflected in my work.
John, you were going to take the next part.
Yeah, no, I'm just kidding. So yeah, I guess for me, I want to hear a little more about how you got going. How you were drawn to weddings. Where were you when you shot your first one, and how just kind of the story of how that progressed into where you are today, and what does today look like?
Yeah, so I actually filmed my first wedding when I was in college. I went to school at Auburn University in Alabama, and I had friends and friends of friends that were getting married in college and right out of college. And I was a radio, television, film major, so with access to the equipment there, I started filming weddings. After college, I moved to Austin and started freelancing for another wedding video company. So that was really where I started learning and really figuring out that I really liked weddings. From there, I started shooting on my own, and then just really built it from there. Sorry, the second part of the question is, what does the business look like now?
Yeah, where do you, you're in New York today, so, are you shooting, I know, some people shoot a ton of weddings, some shoot, a handful. Where do you kind of, how many are you trying to shoot in the year, and then what does that, usually entail for you? How many, where, that kind of thing?
Yeah, so when I first moved to New York, I was all about volume, shooting, as many weddings as I could. I really wanted to just kind of get my feet wet in the city. So I shot all over the place. One unique thing about New York is that we have so many places so close to us. So I can go to Connecticut, I can go to Vermont, New Jersey, Long Island. There's just a ton of places. Mm-hmm. So we're kind of all over there. In the past year or two, I have shifted from taking on a huge volume of work to growing teams. So now I have 2 teams in addition to myself.
Cool.
So I'm taking a bit of a step back with the shooting. That was part of becoming a mom, wanting to be able to devote more time to my family.
Definitely.
While still being able to grow the business. So last year, we did a total of 42 weddings.
Holy.
Yeah.
But that was
those,
between the 2 teams, right?
Yeah, that was between the 2 teams and myself. So 20 of those were mine, and then they made up the remainder. Going forward, I want to kind of shift that a little bit more and have them doing the majority of the shooting, and then me kind of taking a more... I'm definitely still going to keep shooting. I love it. But also just taking a more kind of behind the scenes, dealing with clients.
And are you editing all of those, or is someone on the team helping to edit all those?
Yeah, so a combination of both. I still do the vast majority of the editing, but I do have an editor that helps out with some of the team's work.
Okay, so you're in New York City, you're shooting as a company 40 plus weddings, you're, taking less yourself, doing more of the behind the scenes. What does, just like on the business side of things, like what is a typical, just kind of ballpark, like what are you charging? What does the couple get for that when they're booking you?
Yeah, so we build everything off of like a base package and then do a la carte from there. My packages begin at $7,000, and then my team is at $5,500.
That's cool.
That includes a 17 to 20 minute wedding film and a 3-minute highlight. I know a lot of people are going to say, why are you giving a 17-minute wedding film? The reason for that is because I have found that that's what works best for me and my clients.
Yeah.
I don't like doing doc edits, and I really like editing 17 to 20 minute films. I kind of feel like that's my sweet spot editing wise. And so over the years, I've sort of just like figured out that that's exactly what we need to do. I think with 17 to 20 minutes, you get enough of the day that you don't feel like anything's missing. But if they want to add on, obviously we offer ceremony, speeches, doc edits, all that good stuff.
That's really cool. And we were just talking on another podcast just about like with David from Forestry that just this last week about just like standing out from the crowd and like not just doing what everybody else is doing. So I think that's really cool that you're like offering, I mean, a 17 to 20 minute film. Like what's in that? I mean, is that like a pretty full doc edit mixed with cinematic, or like what does that even feel like?
I mean, honestly, it's cinematic still to me. It doesn't include like big pieces where you're just seeing the ceremony or where you're just seeing a speech or something like that. But it's very audio driven. I mean, there's a ton of audio from the day. You will end up hearing a lot of the ceremony, a lot of the speeches sort of woven throughout. I know it sounds long, especially for people that are delivering like an 8-minute or 10-minute, whatever everyone else is doing now. But yeah, I think it works, and it doesn't feel like a doc edit. It definitely feels like a more cinematically edited piece.
Yeah.
So $7,000 for you. I know you're in New York City, and that's one of the highest per capita weddings, in the country or the world. Is that where you started, or how long have you been charging that much? Where did you kind of start with the pricing side of things?
Yeah, definitely not where I started. I want to say when I moved to New York, I was somewhere around 2,500 maybe. And like I said, that was in 2010, so going on 9 years ago. And just over the years, I've kind of steadily risen the price as demand was there. I think I've been very lucky in that I met and networked with a lot of great wedding planners and photographers who have referred me. And like you said, I mean, I'm in New York, which is one of the most expensive cities in the country, in the world. And so the weddings here just have much bigger budgets, which is, a great benefit for us. But it's also expensive to have a wedding videography business here. You have transportation issues that people don't have in other cities. Shooters charge a lot more to come shoot with you. So the cost is higher, but there's, more expense as well.
And so like you're doing these weddings in New York. What role, I mean, like now are you, you're 10 years in New York. Are you doing a lot of marketing? Are you on, like paying a lot of money to show up in New York? How do you stand out in such a big market?
I'm not. I don't do really any advertising at this point other than whatever I'm doing with Facebook and Instagram. But I don't do any paid advertising locally. Like I said, my biggest thing has been just networking with planners and photographers. Having just a consistent style and even consistency across my teams has given planners and photographers the confidence to recommend, even if I'm not going to be there, to recommend my team.
Right.
They can recommend me with confidence, even knowing that I'm not going to be there. I think that's been a huge thing, like getting processes in place. I have like a crazy packet that I send out to all of my shooters. They probably think I'm nuts with just like, this is exactly how we do everything on the day of. Because I think that that's really helped, especially grow the team part of my business in the last couple of years. Yeah.
So you have a team, how many shooters, how many people do you have that, is it a consistent, 2 people or 4 people, or do you have like kind of a rotating kind of thing? How many people are working under you?
I have 2 people that lead teams. It's always the same. It would always be one of those same 2 people. And then second shooters is just kind of on a rotating basis, whoever locally is available to shoot with us. And then if one of them is not booked, like they'll shoot with each other or one of them will shoot with me.
Okay.
It's awesome that like you're networking and what you've done and the brand that you've built in New York. You've got your niche and you're getting these weddings. You said something about like the style, and it stood out to me, and I've watched a lot of your films, and over the years, like, I mean, what's beautiful about your films is like the style of them isn't like this trendy, moody thing. It's just this beautiful classic piece of art. And so tell me, where you draw your style from, what you're trying to portray on the day, and like just describe your style a little bit more for the listeners.
Yeah, I think my style is very classic. And the reason why I try to keep it as classic as possible is because I feel like that's very timeless. I want my clients to not only have fun sharing their video on Facebook. I mean, everyone wants to do that, share their highlight, have everyone, see it, comment on it, that type of thing. But to value this for 10, 20, 30 years to come. I think back to my own wedding and what has been most important to me in the video, and that is the footage of my grandmother. She was 90 years old. We got married on her anniversary, and she came to New York, first time ever in New York, for the wedding, and it was so special that she was there, and we have like all this great footage of her on the dance floor, and during our ceremony she got up like spur of the moment and came to the front of the, like when my husband and I were standing at the front. So just like little moments like that I treasure, and I think in like 5 years, 20 years, whatever, that is going to be so valuable to me, and those are the types of things that I'm trying to capture for my clients. I know that the dark and moody is super popular. The speed ramping, you get all of these trends that come and go. But I think part of the reason why I've maintained success over the years is that my style has been very consistent. Yeah. It's very clean. I don't use I don't use any special effects, but I don't own a glide cam, all of those types of things. I don't own a drone. My shooters do. So, of course we're using drone work now. But yeah, I think just maintaining consistency has been really key for me.
I think too, as I'm a very sentimental person as well, and like I'm thinking along those lines of just like what is going to be important 20 years from now, and not necessarily just so focused on like what another wedding videographer is going to think of it, but like what they're going to think of it. So I can see why like the 17 to 20 minute film, like that is going to include everything that they're ever going to want to see. I mean, obviously you probably don't always have it be 20 minutes long or whatever. Every wedding's different, but you're including all of the things that were great about the day in that film, I'm assuming.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, I know that it always seems like, 17 minutes, 20 minutes, that's a really long time. But when you think about, like you said, the things that are going to be important to the client in 20 years, you have to sort of take the idea that this is for your portfolio out of your mind. And I know with highlights, it's like, that's what a lot of it's for. It's for our portfolio so we can get more business, obviously. But the features aren't for us. They're for the client. Obviously the highlights are for the client too. I shouldn't make it seem like that. But definitely, I think I'm more willing to include things that maybe I don't think are that important, but that I know that they will think are important, especially as time goes on.
Yeah, that's a really cool thing to keep that. John and I really talk a lot about on the podcast about serving your clients and treating them well and treating them right, and that's ultimately really how you're going to grow in your business is by doing it and doing that kind of thing where you take yourself out of it whenever you're making it, and you're like this video, isn't about me, even though I'm making it and I want to get more business off it or, whatever, but it's really about, the couple and what will they like, what will they cherish, what will they appreciate, all of that stuff. I think that's a huge thing and a great reason, to make these longer, more like heirloom kind of things, that they can keep, forever. So that's really cool that you do.
Yeah, and I mean, I know it's hard because we're all on Facebook, we're all in the groups, and you want to constantly be posting your stuff like, what do you think? All of this. But at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter what other wedding videographers think about it.
No. We talk about that a lot. And I would just, if people are doing math, it's like, if you're shooting 40 weddings at the rate that you're charging, your company is making money. And like, that's, I think we forget a lot about like, oh, we're here to also make money and support our family and take care of our families, to give ourselves the ability to take time off or to be a mom or be a dad. Tell me kind of what life looks like now, being, running these teams, the direction you're going. You kind of alluded to it, but like, where do you see, yourself, your company going in the next 5 years?
Yeah, so life has definitely changed a lot in the past 2 months. And I'm still figuring out sort of how to be a mom and a business owner. Luckily, I had my baby in November, and winter wedding season doesn't exist as much in New York because the weather obviously is not good. So my teams have a few weddings throughout the winter, which has worked out perfectly, and then I'll start back again in May. But 5-year plan is just to continue growing. I definitely want to do higher volume, potentially adding on more lead shooters so we can have more teams. Like I said before, I still want to have a very active role in the shooting and obviously like in the client management and editing. This year I'm planning personally to shoot around 12 weddings. So I'm still doing, quite a few. Yeah. And then I mean, as far as I can think now, I'll probably continue doing that many and maybe even increase as the baby gets older. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I think the whole reason why having a business like this is so amazing is because it does give us so much time to devote to our families and to other things. I feel so lucky to have built the business that I have, and to like be at this place in my life now where I have teams that I've trained and that are wonderful and loyal, and that I can enjoy this time as being a new mom and not have to, be too stressed about the business. So
it's the best part to me about what I do is like in December, I took the whole month off and was able, building this business that I'm running for 12 years or whatever, to like say, hey, I understand all of my numbers. I understand that I'm good. And so for the month of December, like when my 8-year-old is out of school, I'm out of out of work, out of school myself. And so I think a lot of times people are comparing so many things with other wedding videographers and these groups with Facebook. They're all great, but like sometimes you just have to get out of that space and think like, what is best for me? How can I build this brand, this company to get to a point to where if I want to take off, I can.
Yeah, and I feel like the number one question people always ask me is like, oh my gosh, don't you hate, working every weekend? And I'm like, yeah, I mean, working on the weekends can be tough, but you can also block time off in your schedule, or like you said, take the whole month off, kind of whatever works best for you, which most people don't have the luxury of doing. So it's nice.
Yeah. Isn't it kind of interesting that people, when we start in this business, we're like, all I want to do is work. You start editing and you start filming and you start doing, and it's like, you're putting in, 60, 70, 80, a million hours a week. And then after so long, you start to realize like, this is no way to live, right? Like working all the time. And so putting stuff in place is such a great, a great thing to do so that you can take some time for yourself. You said you have two people that are, your second team lead shooters. What was that process like in finding those people to work for you?
Yeah, so I feel like honestly with both of them, I've been extremely lucky. One of them, his name is Saul. We met on Craigslist about 7 or 8 years ago. So he's been working with me the whole time, basically that I've lived in New York. And he's just awesome, super creative shooter. Also just really reliable, great person. And so once I decided that I wanted to start growing teams, I asked him if he would be interested. And so he just kind of naturally moved into that role. He had shot so many weddings with me that I felt confident he knew exactly what he needed to do. Mm-hmm. He knew my process. He knew how things worked. And then with the second person, I also met him on Craigslist, which is funny that I'm saying this because I feel like it's absolutely impossible to find people there. I just got lucky with like 2 needles in a haystack. And he also is just, I feel like the type of person that I want representing my business. You know, we try to make a very small footprint on the day of, not coming in with tons and tons of gear, definitely taking a more unobtrusive approach. Like I said, honing in on tiny emotional moments, which I feel like both of them do very well. And I think part of it is just sort of kind of coaching along the way. Like, oh, when you did something this way, can you just tweak it a little bit and do it that way instead? But for the most part, they've just done so great on their own. So yeah, both from Craigslist.
There you have it. Just go to Craigslist, type in search of man with camera, and it'll be great.
Yeah. No, nothing wrong. Nothing wrong can come from that at all. Fail-proof system.
But not just from Craigslist, but in, through years of just building relationships, and
it's just that slow, steady. You're taking time, slow and steady, and you're building and you're training and you're growing, and it doesn't have to be perfect. And I think people just see, so many others, and it's like they're comparing their, we've said it before, their first or second wedding with our 500th wedding, and how dangerous that can be to your creativity too. You talked about having a minimal footprint, and that kind of like rang a bell in my head with like when we were talking with Matt Koza, who I know you guys are good friends, about how little you actually bring on a wedding day. You're in New York. I mean, the transportation, you're not in the same venue for most the wedding and the reception, and you're going all over. You don't, in Tulsa, Oklahoma, it's like we can bring a cart and pack the gear and park our car up front and like no parking, and it's just easy breezy. Like we don't even think about that. And so tell me kind of on the wedding day, geek out a little bit. What's in your camera bag? What are you bringing, and what does that look like for you?
Yeah, so we do bring very minimal gear because like you said, it's typically multiple locations, bride prep here, church here, photo session here, and then reception over there. And we're either like in and out of Ubers, or if we're lucky and the bride has some sort of transportation set up for us, we can throw our stuff to the back trunk of her limo or whatever. But yeah, so I only bring 2 bags with me, one rolling case that holds my light stands, tripods, and monopod. It's like a big, one of those hard shell cases. Mm-hmm. And then my camera bag. I shoot Canon, so we're shooting with Mark IV, and then all of our lenses. So all of that fits in that bag. Mm-hmm. And then I usually will bring like a smaller, just like tote kind of bag that has all of our audio gear and my slider. And that's it. Like I said, since I'm not using like a glide cam or Ronin or anything like that.
It's awesome. I think it's super refreshing because I feel like especially newer people, it's like they see, and I keep talking about these newer people that we see in these groups, but it's like the established people that we're talking to that have been doing this a decade plus, that are yielding $7,000, $8,000 wedding films. They keep saying the same thing, which is like, oh, I have very minimal gear. I'm not trying to overdo it. Talk to me about just like your approach, like, the simplicity of what you're trying to do to get solid footage, solid audio during the day. Are you trying to be super creative? What is that? What's your approach on the wedding day?
Yeah. So funny story. I actually attempted to mix a Ronin into my workflow. So I ordered the new, is it the Ronin S that came out fairly recently? Because I was like, oh, it's small. I can just like throw it in my bag. And it sat in the corner of my office for so long that it actually like got out of the B&H return policy, even though I had never even taken it out of the box. And I was like, oh man, I'm never going to use this. And then I ended up having to sell it on eBay because they wouldn't take it back. But at the end of the day, what it came down to me was that I felt like I was going to be sacrificing just getting the good shot that was happening by trying to set up this other thing that I had brought with me. Especially because a lot of times we're like running from place to place. So we're getting there and just even trying to like throw my camera on a monopod to catch what's happening was all that I had time to do. And so I think that trying to add in another piece of gear, while it's beautiful and I have nothing but respect for people that are able to use it and create beautiful content with it, it just didn't work for my workflow and on the day of. So yeah, I think just keeping it simple and focusing on just kind of like what is in front of me and just trying to capture all of that is sort of what I have to do just based on the types of weddings that I'm shooting. Every now and then we get lucky and we're just all at one location all day.
Yeah.
But not that often.
So I know, you really, as you were talking about it, I'm sure that that's kind of a selling point whenever you're talking to potential clients about how, you create these timeless classic, kind of videos and that kind of stuff. Just with I'm just curious if you've gotten much pushback from that from your clients. If they want something, a little more trendy or a little colored, like or are you just to the point now because you've been doing it for 10 years that, the people that contact you, they kind of know what they're going to get?
Yeah, I mean, for the most part, the people that contact me or like the planners that have referred me, they know the specific style that we shoot in. And so they're recommending me to a client because they think that this client is going to identify with that type of film. But every now and then I do get emails from people that are like, we want like a more fun video or more upbeat, because I do feel like my stuff is more emotional. And I'll definitely talk with people about that, but I'm not afraid to say, you may want to consider going with someone else simply because that's not what we specialize in and what I don't think our strong, our strong suit is making these like crazy fast-paced videos or something with really dramatic coloring that we just don't typically do.
Yeah, that's good. And it's good to know, well, here you are, 10 years in, and I think that's a really huge advice to maybe some newer people that might be listening is, when you first start out, you're going to take everything. Like if this was year 1 or year 2 for you and someone said, we want this, you'd be like, okay, I'll do that. But you've learned, to kind of say no because you know what you're good at and you know what you can deliver and you know what you like to do. And you don't need to do a video like that for you to stay in business,
Right. And I think that's part of like being in business so long is that you can, by the time you're 10 years in, you're going to have created what your style is. Yeah. I mean, I think in the beginning, you're figuring it out. So you're trying out different things, like what you like doing, how you like shooting. And then, when you're this far down the road, you're probably not going to be mixing it up as often just because you found what you're good at. You have your systems in place. I mean, every wedding is different, but every wedding is sort of the same too. I mean, it's like there's definitely a formula. And so you can sort of have not a formula, but like a way that you do things at every single wedding. Like these are the things that I'm going to do during bride prep, during groom prep. This is how we set up every ceremony that we shoot. When we shoot the speeches, this is how we set it up. So you can have like processes and stuff in place. Because I mean, not that you don't change and grow and continue evolving when you're 10 years in, but I think that, once you kind of find your style, you can just continue honing that and making it better and better.
Yeah.
I was going to say to people that are listening that are a little bit newer, what advice, I guess, would you give somebody that's in their second, third year, just advice in general or about the wedding day? What kind of advice would you give somebody on how to build your style, how to build a brand, that sort of a thing?
I mean, just hard work and practice. I think the only way that you're going to get better at shooting and better at editing is just to keep doing it more and more and more. Shoot as much as you can. If you're brand new and only have, a couple weddings under your belt, I say shoot for other people. whose work you admire. Second shooting is a great way to learn how to shoot. Like I said, I started out working for another wedding video company, and I learned a ton working for them. They ended up going out of business, which is why I kind of went on my own.
Learn what not to do.
No, I mean,
just kidding.
not because they didn't have business. They had like other jobs and decided to only focus on that and sort of let the wedding video go. But you made a comment earlier that I can definitely relate with. I remember in the beginning, I lived in Austin, and of course, Joe Simon was from Austin. And I remember watching his work back when he was doing weddings and being like, wow, I can't even imagine ever producing anything that looks even remotely like this. And I still obviously am not on Joe Simon's level, but I think that I'm producing good work. And there was a time when I couldn't see that for myself. Like I could not see this business or what we're creating or like the success that I've had. And so I think don't compare yourself too much to what you're seeing online or think that you'll never be able to produce what you're seeing, because you will. It just takes a lot of time and a lot of practice and patience.
Yeah, and another thing with that, and that we have talked a little bit about before, but it's easy for you or us, to look at these other great people. For me, that was Rob Adams, when I first started. And I remember he put out this video one time. I think the bride was deaf. And it was amazing, and it blew up. And I remember sending him this Facebook message and be like, I'm watching this and I literally am amazed and I feel like crap at the same time, And, he wrote me back and, tried to encourage me. And he basically said that same, I've been doing this for a long time, but a better gauge, that we need to do is, instead of looking at these people that have been doing it 10 years, if you've been doing it for 1 year, look at where you are now and then look back on where you were a year ago. If you've been doing it 5 years, do the same thing and kind of judge yourself on yourself, like how far you've come and what you've done. I think that is a great way to help you continue to grow in your business.
Totally. I don't even like looking at stuff that I shot last year. So I know,
Same.
even though, I mean,
Oh, sure. Yeah.
just because you're like, oh no, I've changed and I'm doing things differently now. But yeah, and I think that we're our own worst critic.
Oh,
too, so.
Sure. There's something about, that artist inside of us, whatever that looks like. And, if you're a true quote unquote artist, as soon as you finish something, you're going to hate it or nitpick it or, whatever you can be. So I know we kind of touched on this. So you just had a baby, right? About a couple months ago, right? So it hasn't been real long, right?
No, he's 2 months.
Okay, he's 2 months. So you're still, on maternity leave, so you really haven't gotten to experience kind of, being a working mom, like really yet, right?
Yeah. I mean, I've been, taking calls and emails and meetings and that type of thing, and doing some editing, but I have not gone back to shooting yet.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, that'll be an interesting thing to maybe check up on with you in the future, and just seeing how having a baby has affected your business, both positively, and now stuff that might be a challenge or whatever like that. But I know that.
Yeah, I mean, you guys probably know, because the day after a wedding, you're so tired. But then you have, you don't get to sleep in.
No, yeah,
like you used to.
No, yeah, like that was a big rude awakening for me and my wife whenever we had kids. It was like, oh, I'm exhausted. Nope, doesn't matter.
They
wedding
still
came
want
over
to
too
eat.
bad.
the nerve. No, I think it's really cool. We're friends on Facebook. I see the photos you post. He's adorable. I saw the headphones photo yesterday. It's like just so much joy. And having kids really does, like, once they're getting a little bit older, the layering of your storytelling, even on your wedding films, like it just feels different. Like whenever I have two girls, so it's like I'm seeing a bride on the wedding day. And the mother of the bride, I picture my wife in that position, or and it's like, oh my God, it means so much more. It's just like it punches me right and I'm a very emotional guy too.
I can't tell you how many times watching the, father-daughter dance, like it has made me cry now because I have a daughter. you know, and like I get to do
Yeah.
that Sunday. Or my wife, you know, after our son was born and she's watching these, mother son dances, you know, thinking about her doing that, so, you know, like then like she's like crying and stuff. So it definitely is a different perspective. And it also, I know you were talking about, you know, these moments that matter to you are important to you, but whenever you become a parent, like you just have another, like you're looking at it through another lens, right? And these things before where you like, oh, I know I should include this because I filmed it and I know it's important to them. But now as a parent, you're like, okay, I get why this is important a little bit.
Right. I know. I have this one wedding that was from, I don't know, it was 4 or 5 years ago. And the groom's mom gave a speech, which I know is rare. Like the groom's mom is not the person that's usually speaking at a wedding. And she like opened the speech by being like, when you were born, you changed my life forever. Ugh. And now I just keep like playing that in my mind. I'm like, oh, like a mother's love. And then she's just, you know, her son is grown. I don't know. It's crazy the emotion that you think and feel when you become a parent. But it just reinforces how important the work that we are doing is.
Exactly.
Especially because obviously his mother's not going to live forever. And for his children and his grandchildren and everyone that comes after to be able to hear her voice and, you know, see her face. And I mean, not only her, but everyone else that was at the wedding. I think that is just really what makes our work so special.
And I think like definitely like since having kids and being married, you know, like I'm shooting in such a way where it's like, yes, I know that this might not make it to my portfolio or my promo reel, but it's like a really sweet moment that like is happening. And most people are just like, well, that doesn't look great. The light's not super great. But I catch myself filming a lot of that, you know, or like a flower girl watching the bride in the mirror or just things like that, where it's just like, this moment is going to mean something for this family for the generations to come. So, you know, filtering my shooting style that way, like just sitting there on the wedding day thinking like this is something that I'm serving the couple with, changes the entire outlook of the day, instead of like, okay, I've got to get this wide shot here. And I mean, yes, we need that stuff, but like being able to do that, you know, and have that really, that focus really changes the emotion of the entire day. I wanted to...
Yes. Sorry, speaking to that just for a second.
Yeah, go for it.
That's one thing that I really try to teach my shooters and also be aware of myself is that, you know, for instance, if you're shooting the bride putting her shoes on, like, yes, that's a moment that you want for your video. But also try to be aware of what's happening around you at that time. Like maybe her grandmother is standing off to the side, like not even anywhere near your shot, but she's emotional or she's smiling or, you know, whatever. I think you have to be aware of everything going on around you.
That's huge.
Not only focused in just on what is happening, because a lot of times that's what ends up being more important than the action that you're actually in the middle of shooting.
That's a huge point. Yeah. Cause a lot of times we're so focused in our, like, oh, we're getting the shoe shot and the shoe shot from another angle. And then another angle, it's like, okay, I got the shoe shot. What can I be? Just like take my eye out of my camera for a second and look around, you know,
like, oh no, I missed Dad doing whatever he was doing, you know? So
that's a really big point. We've mentioned Matt Koza a couple times. I wanted to talk to you about, like, Nick and I, we will send each other messages pretty much every day and be like, hey, what do you think about this part of this film? Or what do you think of this audio? One thing that I've really realized is like having a buddy that does this has made my films get way better. What is your relationship like with Matt? Are you guys helping each other, or would you talk a little bit about like the buddy system?
Yeah, totally. No, he's definitely my buddy, my local buddy for sure. And yeah, I mean, we're constantly like sending work back and forth to each other. I mean, like completed work, say like, what do you think of this? What should I change on this? But then also referring, you know, if I'm booked, I'll send him work. Same with him sending me stuff. And then also shooting with each other every chance that we get. You know, if there's a date that I'm not booked and he reaches out, I'll shoot with him, and then same for him. But yeah, it's great to just have someone to be able to like bounce ideas off of and that kind of stuff. Yeah.
One thing, and I don't know, the wedding video world seems to be very heavily male dominated, right? I mean, you'd agree. And that was one reason, you know, when we were, you know, looking you came very highly recommended. Like whenever we were like, hey, who are some, female, filmmakers that are just making some great stuff? Like I can't tell you how many responses that we got saying we want to hear from McKenzie Miller. So
that's so cool.
Yeah. So what?
You're awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. So in just saying that, like, do you have any maybe advice to, your female friends out there that, want to really break through, but, all that you're seeing is all these, men that are doing this kind of stuff. Like what advice would you give to those, other girls out there that are really trying to make it, but are just maybe kind of frustrated that there aren't as many females as they would like there to be?
Yeah, I mean, just go for it. I think that we have a really unique place in the market because, like you said, there's really not a lot of female videographers, which I don't know why. I think it's such a great job for women to have, and especially because you can relate so well with the bride, you can put your female emotion into it, all of those types of things. I think that has been a huge benefit for my business. And yeah, I mean, don't be intimidated by it being, only men. I've been to plenty of networking events when I've been the only female there. But it is what it is. It's kind of just how it's always been, I think. But yeah, definitely don't let that deter you and just go for it.
I feel like it's a huge advantage. I mean, like for me, I'm like always like, hey, there's a guy coming into the room getting ready. Sorry, I'm a dude. Or it's like, hey, you're putting on your dress. When you get to be, PG-13, let me know.
Totally.
So like I'm missing out on these things.
Yeah, you don't know if they're going to remember to come get you. Like,
and I've had to like teach myself to be emotional.
I am generally floored that there aren't more female editors. Like, I mean, like seriously, because females generally, are more in tune with emotion and, can like get that kind of stuff. And to have, like, I can't tell you how many times I do all the editing for our business and my wife comes in and she watches that and she's like, well, now why did you put that shot there? And why did you do this? And I was really into this moment. And then because I'm just thinking differently. And I'm surprised that there aren't more females, editing to really pull out that emotion and story that men can do. But I think females are just maybe have an easier knack at doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think there should be more, more
come on,
females
ladies.
in this business.
Ladies that are listening, come on. No. And I think too, like just the perspective, like as a guy, like my wife, I can walk into my house and she's like taking the 20-foot by 20-foot rug out of our living room and I don't notice it. Like she's like, did you notice? And I'm like, oh God, what did? Okay, and she's like, the chair's moved and the rug's missing. And I'm like, oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's I was gonna say
like
that.
the detail, or I have a couple of females that shoot with me and have edited with me, and they're like, why'd you show that shot of the bride's back? Look at her back's like scrunched up right there. And I'm like, oh, I didn't even. And so like it took me a long time to like really train myself on that. So the details that women can pick up,
or stuff like you're walking down a street, and I'm sure in New York it's a little bit different, but like there's the couple looks great, but then there's like these ugly beat up cars or all these cars on the side of the road, and she's like, why didn't you stand on the other side of the sidewalk, Nick? Like that could have, I've gotten the building instead of the street, like that kind of stuff that I'm in my zone doing my thing, and I'm not paying attention to my surroundings, which comes back to your comment earlier about, the shoes. Don't just pay attention to the shoes, pay attention to the bridesmaids and the grandma and the mom, which is, you said that. And I'm like, that's a really good idea. I've been doing this for 7 years. Why haven't I done that before? Dang
it, McKenzie.
We're always learning, all of us.
This is why we're doing the podcast. The dozens of listeners we care about, but we're really doing this so Nick and I can get better.
Definitely.
So we don't even have a podcast. We're just trying to talk to people that are killing it.
That's so good.
This is never going to go online.
No, not a chance. We're not recording.
No. So good. So we're running close on time here. We thank you so much for joining us. If there's if people want to check out your work or get in contact with you and pick your brain for ideas or whatever, where would they find you? Where can they learn about you and your stuff and all that?
Yeah, I mean, you can find my website, McKenzieMillerFilms.com. My email's on there, so you can always get in touch, or on Instagram. I'm pretty active on there. yeah, either place.
Yeah. And one cool thing that I saw that you are doing on Instagram, because this is your 10 years of being in business, you're like going back and through and showing some of your favorite, films over the last decade. I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's been a really fun thing to go through, and also just to see how different my shooting style has, kind of become over the years, my editing style. And just look back on fun memories. So I'm going to try to keep up with it through the rest of the year. So
yeah. Well, I mean, it's a good goal, and I think it's a really neat thing, not only to, show your fans, but show yourself, and then also give, these people that, maybe 10 years ago didn't have Instagram, or, because it wasn't a thing, but now they get to, experience their stuff that way. So that's kind of neat. So
that is cool.
Yeah. So again, thank you, McKenzie, so much for joining us. If you're watching this on YouTube, because we upload the videos to YouTube now, make sure to subscribe and share that maybe with someone that could find this information helpful. If you're listening on iTunes or Stitcher or wherever podcasts are played, leave us a review. That'd be helpful. Thanks again for listening. Until next time, see ya.
Bye-bye.